Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and More Wilds. We are about to have the August patch, title update 2.5 basically at this point. And so I want to talk about all we know about it, but also what you could do right now before it drops. Because if they're going to introduce new endgame content that's going to require a lot of, say, monster materials, you can do that right now. Let's talk about it. On August 13th, we're getting a bigger patch than we expected. This is largely because of an endgame expansion, as they call it, being brought from title update 3 as originally planned, and now we're just getting it in this August patch. This is a new endgame loop that is going to tie into a new talisman system and a harder difficulty of quest, as they describe it. Let's start with a new difficulty of quests and what that likely means. Basically, we could refer to this in many ways. Is this now a 9-star difficulty quest, or is it something different? Now, there are two systems in the game that are completely underused. Those are the guardian or construct type of monster, and then of course there are the frenzy type of monster. As I've been saying throughout different speculation videos for the future of the game, I do wonder whether we're going to see a new story for frenzy, for constructs, because it is a big deal, both of these systems. And it's the idea that we've kind of immunized guardians and constructs as a whole through the high rank story, but you still have frenzied monsters and they still make their way into wyvria. So some sort of construct versus frenzy war sounds like a really cool idea, and there's definitely something there on the table for that concept. Do I think we're going to get something story related, narrative related because of that? Definitely not, and then that'd be a waste as well. So I actually don't think it's going to tie into construction frenzy based on that, because I'm just hopeful for bigger and better things. However, they absolutely could use these monsters for a different system. Obviously, as we've talked about before, there was the Rise Afflicted system, which basically expanded the difficulty and mechanics of monsters. And it progressed in a really satisfying and interesting way, where it started with beginner monsters suddenly becoming afflicted. They had this afflicted core system where you needed to break the lights, the red lights across the body, and sort of break the core before you run out of time and it explodes in a massive nuke. That on top of increased health and damage and the usual stuff, it gave you a reason to end up challenging an earlier monster. So if we had some sort of new version of Afflicted and they did it that way, it would mean that we'd have to go fight like Cumatrice in some sort of juiced up steroid mode, or Chatacabra, which would be amazing. I want to see him get his own back and be like a challenging fight. It's probably not going to be that extreme if we go that way, but like a consistent mechanic between whatever that would be, like they did with Afflicted, would add difficulty. And a reason to go back and fight some of these very underhunted new monsters of wilds is something I'm all for. Especially when it comes to tier 2 monsters. Like I've said, Zuwu, a top contender for me, one of my favourite monsters in the series. So if they use this new difficulty quest as an excuse to go back and give us more challenging versions of the starting monsters, and then they go the way of the Afflicted system, where each small update, they actually give us a new roster of monsters that progresses through tier 1 into tier 2 and so on, that'd be great. Plus, an interesting aspect of that was each of the tiers of afflicted monsters gave you different afflicted parts, which you needed for different systems, which even then would mean you'd go back and fight that category of afflicted monster every now and then just to get those parts. So yes, that would work really well, and there's the potential of the construct and frenzied monsters to work into that. That would also encourage a lot of variety and mini updates, which they've clearly liked to do. Outside of that, something a lot more tame that would be a lot more disappointing to me, but could be possible, would be, say, a tempered Zoshir. Obviously, having one target that will repeatedly farm for all of the new resources would suck, as we've been through that with Arkveld already, and, you know, they've learned from that. So I think it's very unlikely, but right now we don't have a tempered Zoshir, and we're already moving into arch-tempered monsters for others. So it does make me wonder. Whatever this new difficulty quest actually turns out to be, it will be directly linked to the new Talisman endgame system. So, from these new difficulty of quests, you will get new talismans that can RNG roll offensive skills, defensive skills, and decoration slots. So, everyone's pretty hyped because this is going to shift up the meta, and that's exactly what they say they want it to do. Imagine you can get crit boost on these talismans, which means you free up those slots that were previously required on offensive decorations, and that sucked because with crit boost you can't get an extra skill level on the side like you can with a lot of offensive decorations. Then there's the topic of unique monster weapon skills. Will those be possible on the new talismans? The clearest examples of that we have are things like White Flame Torrent from Zoshia weapons, which basically gives you a blast status, or there's Blade Scale Honing, where basically you perfect evade an attack, and that would generate new ammo if you're a ranged player, or it would give you new sharpness, which would increase your damage for a little period of attack, but it didn't really last that long. If that was just passively part of your gameplay, well, that'd be amazing. So if these things came for your talisman, that would be very exciting. And then don't forget, the future of all monsters being added in title updates, all getting their own unique skills on their weapons, that being possible on the talismans, that'd be awesome. Another question would be the decoration slots. How many are you going to get on these new talismans? In fact, how big are they going to be? In the start of Rise, I believe the biggest you could get was a 3 slot, which would make sense in our current context. But in Sunbreak, you could get 4 slot decorations, which isn't really a thing here, so probably not. Either way, I would assume up to 3 decoration slots of varying size, and then all of it's probably going to fall under a charm table, where there's the similar rules of the past. If we look back at the charm table and the situation with that back in Rise and their talisman system, each skill had a grade, as well as you having different decoration sizes and amounts. So not everything is possible, and naturally it's harder to get all the best options, obviously. So if you had 2 skills tagged as an A or S grade, it'd be really hard to get like the best decoration slots. Further, with the way that they would do the meld system, that would require monster materials and different tickets as resources to then meld these new talismans. And since we know we're going to have to do these newer difficulty quests to get whatever resources necessary for the talisman endgame system they're adding, I'm wondering whether it's going to be a combination of monster parts and a new ticket system or something that we don't currently have access to, forcing us to go do those new difficulty quests. On that note then, if you want to prepare for that concept right now, well, you could. Monster materials and tickets are what we're expecting to be used to meld, like if it's the same as it was in Rise. And obviously they're free to do a different system, but it may very well be a good idea to stock yourself up on those monster materials, the higher value ones, so you've got a nice big boost to immediately use as the patch drops. Now logically, the higher value materials will be more important. So gems, orbs, plates, that kind of thing. And then the higher tier monster, the higher value you have with the point system. So, lagiacrus, Zoshia, seregios, arkveld, gore, mizu, all the apexes at their highest level is probably going to be great targets for this. A good idea for this then would be to run investigations that reward one of those things like an orb or a gem every time you do it. Certainly worth the added challenge of a tempered monster or whatever, which shouldn't be an issue anyway. But if you are just going for like the highest value parts, you could just do the normal version of these guys and do it really quick. And what's nice about this concept is that if it all goes wrong and it's just completely new resources you need, you're not going to use monster parts that you already have, well then those parts could go into something great like armor spheres, so you're ready to upgrade new gear and be fully prepped for that. Outside of that, it's the usual stuff to prepare for hard content, isn't it? Making sure, yes, all of your armor is fully upgraded to give yourself the max defense. It's also a great idea to drop your max DPS sets down a little bit, take out some small efficiencies and maximum effective raw decorations, and slap in some divine blessing or specific element resistances, that kind of thing. When you're learning new stuff, you don't need to speedrun it. And the more tanky you are, the easier it is to spend time watching mechanics, watching movesets, and being ready for them from then on. As usual, I recommend a buffing and gathering set. The buffing set's purpose is to quickly be able to eat buffs, but also extend how long they last with the item Prolonger skill. Instead of having Mega Demon Drug for 30 minutes, you can have it for 45 minutes instead. This also works as the same increase in terms of percent for, say, Might Seeds and other smaller lasting buffs. So before a serious quest that I'm really going hard on, I swap to the buffing set, eat all my buffs, swap to the set I'm actually going to hunt in, and it takes 2 seconds. The very same set could also be a gathering set because there's plenty of room now for all the skills you might want to go gather Might Seeds and other stuff like that while you're doing other hunts or just chilling. And if you're someone that likes to be prepared, you could do that right now. Right, the last topic to quickly mention for the August update, last big thing coming in, is the weapon adjustments. They had planned dual blades, hunting horn, lance, light bowgun and heavy bowgun for upwards adjustments in this August update, which is quite interesting because as we said, dual blades and hunting horn are performing incredibly compared to what they were before, especially dual blades with top rankings for say Arch-Tempered Duna and Seregios in Title Update 2. Further improvements, further upwards adjustments is a surprise in that way. Meanwhile, lance, light bowgun, heavy bowgun, there are definitely strong arguments for these things needing buffs. Lance is an obvious one where its DPS, its general output, is lower than the rest of the weapons on average, especially when you look at common speedrun rankings. Every update, every new monster. Light bowgun and heavy bowgun, it might be a bit more, complex than that. Because light bowgun, in my opinion, is lacking mechanically in wilds, compared to Rise and the amazing slide and flips and all the ways you would use your mines, which was super unique and super fun. You are very grounded, and it's mostly like the most exciting part is doing the burst step when you've got the gauge system active, which obviously isn't always there. Otherwise you're just standing there and shooting, which to be fair I know appeals to certain light bow gunners, but man, I much preferred the Rise gameplay. So more mechanics and options for light bowgun I'd love to see. Meanwhile, for heavy bowgun, it definitely just needs sort of a push in output. It's got all of the unique mechanics, like it can guard, which means it can clash. It's even got an offset. It's got all the ammo types and so on. They did this little push to make spread a little bit better recently, but I want to see that for a lot of different ammo types for heavy bowgun in specific. Though, admittedly, if we're going to change anything mechanically about heavy bowgun, I would love that offset to be a bit better. Easy way to do that would mean, hey, you don't need ignition mode to actually use it anymore, or something else. But, as they've said, there is going to be more weapon adjustments than originally planned in this update, so there's quite a few weapons that could see changes unexpectedly. My number one pick though would be bow, as it definitely needs some sort of help. Since the beta to launch, it feels like it was over nerfed. And then at launch, there was this reasonable playstyle around Dragon Piercer, which they also nerfed. As I've stated before, that would suggest that they don't like just using one attack over and over as a basis of a weapon, which is silly because switch axe and insect glaive are literally doing that anyway. So for bow, I want to see buffs to output and encourage that more varied gameplay, sure. Meanwhile, for weapons like switch axe and insect glaive, I want to see a reduction in doing one attack over and over. So switch axe is full release spam. For insect glaive, it's all about building up a rising spiral slash and dumping your essence, and rebuilding or reamping whichever weapon we're talking about. So, things to encourage rapid morph gameplay and transformation attacks for switch axe and general combos. Maybe zero sum discharge could come back. And insect glaive, there's the entire kit of the weapon outside of rising spiral slash to lean into. But yeah, that's about everything I want to cover to make you as prepared as possible for the August update. We're going to be covering all of it as it happens, and I just can't wait to sink my teeth in. So until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.